Welcome to Above Replacement Radio. I am your host, Chris Gianta. I might be becoming a bad baseball fan who can't enjoy the romantic things because of advanced statistics. 15 years from now, I want to be on the early baseball committee. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran.
I literally have the Fangraphs hoodie, the baseball reference t-shirt, just repping some stats, you know what I'm saying?
It's not necessarily Hall of Fame. It's not necessarily above average, but we can guarantee you we are better than just the standard replacement level college sophomore.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing really well today. This is truly a very special episode for ARR. This is definitely one that we've been waiting for a while. We got a very special interview for you guys today. Chris, you want to get into that very quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a thing where, like we've referenced this name on the show, like maybe the most we've referenced some like a non-player manager executive on a show or on the podcast. Sarah Langs. We interviewed Sarah Langs. It was great. She was on the podcast for over a half hour. Gave some great answers.
Yeah, but hey, I mean, listen, come for Sarah Langs and stay for some of the topics that we have today outside of that. And there are some big ones. I'll just start off with the big topic in baseball right now. Fernando Tatis Jr. was suspended 80 games for violating the league's PED policy. This was announced yesterday afternoon, and there is a lot to dive into with this. And I'm just going to start with his statement because I think there was a lot of things to dissect from that.
Yeah.
Let me just pull up the statement real quick. There are a lot of takeaways from this. I think the most you should read into this is just by looking at his statement. All right, I'm just going to read it real quick because I have it pulled up right now. All right, so this is released yesterday from the Players Association on behalf of Fernando Tatis Jr. He said, quote, "I've been informed by Major League Baseball that a test sample I submitted returned a positive result for clostable." Is that how it's pronounced?
Maybe.
Okay.
It's one of the,
clostable, which is a banned.
If it ends in BOL, it's some type of steroid. Yeah.
Yes, it's a banned substance, of course. It turns out that I inadvertently took a medication to treat ringworm that contained clostable. I should have used the resources available to me in order to ensure that no banned substances were in what I took, and I failed to do so. I want to apologize to Peter, AJ, the entire Padres organization, my teammates, Major League Baseball, and fans everywhere for my mistake. I have no excuse for my error, and I would never do anything to cheat or disrespect the game I love. I have taken countless drug tests throughout my professional career, including on March 29th, 2022, which have all returned in negative results until this test. I am completely devastated. There is nowhere else in the world I would rather be than on the field competing with my teammates. After initially appealing the suspension, I have realized that my mistake was the cause of this result, and for that reason, I've decided to start serving my suspension immediately. I look forward to rejoining my teammates on the field in 2023. So there was a lot there were a lot of takeaways that people had from this statement, and I would just like to say, I think this is actually a pretty decent statement. I think he probably did this the best way that he could have. You look at a lot of, and I'll get into this specifically, but a lot of new age positive steroid tests in baseball, they're not the same as what they were before, like the A-Rod suspension in 2013. I'd say that was really when the tide started changing around the climate on this subject. And it seems like a lot of the time people test positive for steroids, it's that they do exactly this. They inadvertently take some sort of substance to heal from an injury or from some sort of condition that happens that contains something that it's a banned substance without them realizing. And a lot of people will accidentally do this, and they'll come out with statements saying, like, this must be a mistake. I definitely never did anything. They'll come out saying, well, I only did it to treat a medical issue. I wasn't trying to, gain a competitive edge. And, while both of those things can be true, there really is no excuse because Major League Baseball provides plenty of services for players to ensure that anything they might be taking doesn't include any banned substances. And like Fernando Tatis Jr. mentioned, there were resources available to him that he just simply didn't use. So it was just a pretty for lack of a better term, it was a stupid decision. I think my takeaway from this entire thing is similar to the motorcycle incident where he just had a complete lapse of his judgment. He did something that he really shouldn't have. I don't think that he was trying to cheat. I don't think that he was trying to gain some sort of competitive edge. I really believe that he was trying to heal from something. I don't know if it's ringworm. That's also been a whole topic, but yeah, I really think he messed up, and it happens to be the second time that he's done so.
Right. Yeah. And like, yeah, it could have been a thing where he was recovering from ringworm. I mean, before any statement came out, I was like, well, he was on the injured list, and he was on the injured list more longer than he expected to be. So he probably wanted to get back as fast as possible and probably took something that was illegal. I mean, that was like part of the thing. Like even back in the actual steroid era, like a lot of guys took steroids because it made them feel it made them feel very rested and recovered in the middle of the season. And that's why they were able to perform so well. It wasn't necessarily to put on 30 pounds of muscle. Probably same thing with Fernando Tatis Jr. I hate to make a cross sport reference, but as a Patriots fan, I know this happened with Julian Edelman. Edelman in 2017, wide receiver for the Patriots, he tore his ACL in 2017. He got suspended right before the 2018 season for taking a performance enhancing drug, which he was probably just recovering from his injury, wasn't satisfied with his recovery process, and probably wanted to ramp it up. I would imagine that was the same with Tatis, and I believe his wrist that he injured. Also the thing with Tatis was initially when he got that injury, it was like, oh, he's missing 3 months. He's probably out till June, which was bad enough. And then, a couple months ago, there was news saying there's a setback. He's not going to be able to return for another couple months. And that had to have been very frustrating. And he probably turned to something, trying to make that process quicker.
Yeah. I don't even know where I want to go from here because there are so many things that I think we should talk about with this. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, he had some setbacks in his injury recovery process, and he might have turned to something for a desperate time. I know that the statement did say worm, and there's been a lot of discussion over if that was a lie or not. Some people are 100% convinced it is. Some people believe, what I've seen a couple times on Twitter is there's another substance with a very similar name to clostebol that can be used to treat ringworm, and he must have mistaken the two.
Right. Yeah.
Which is certainly possible. I don't know. Like my initial thought was like, everybody knows that you've been injured. Like, why would you lie about having a different sort of problem that you were treating? Like you had an easy out by saying I was recovering from my injury, because nobody would question that. People were like, well, yeah, you've been injured the whole year. And the only reason I thought of was he just didn't want people to tie it back into the motorcycle stuff, which I think people are just going to do anyway, because that's just, that's how this whole thing started. Like, if he wasn't riding a motorcycle, we're not talking about any of this.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it could have been a mistaken thing with the ringworm medication. I also think it could have been a thing where he had ringworm, and he could have used that as an excuse as to why he was taking something, and not necessarily something that maybe he had the ringworm, but he wasn't treating it with this actual drug.
Yeah.
So I think that's a possibility. Yeah, I think, I think you make a very good point in him not trying to tie it back to the motorcycle thing, because it's like, oh, I got in this motorcycle accident that took me out for 5 months, and I got banned for using a drug that tried to make the recovery process quicker from that. Remember that motorcycle accident? Yeah, I got banned. I'm getting banned now for 80 games trying to take a drug to help recover from that injury. Like, that's a real double down.
Like, even if it's ringworm, like, there's no reason not to tie this whole thing back to the motorcycle incident, in my opinion. Like, Like I really don't think any of this happens without it. Like I mentioned,
Yeah.
a lot of Padres like executives, players were very disappointed, and obviously, I mean, this is you spend the whole year waiting to get a guy like Tatis back. They've kind of been struggling down the stretch a little bit. They've been playing pretty mediocre-ish baseball over the last month or so. Doesn't help that it also comes at a time where the Dodgers have won 24 of the last 28. But I mean, you wait all year for a guy like Fernando, and at the very least, you do get Juan Soto, which is not a bad consolation. And there's like a week-long period where you're like, hey, we're gonna have both of them, and now you don't, but you still get that addition that you were hoping for. Plus, you get Josh Bell and Brandon Drury. So, I think the Padres are going to be able to survive the rest of this year without him, no doubt. They've played the whole year without him, and they've been fine. And they had one of the best trade deadlines in the majors.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I mean, I don't think it affects their actual chances of getting into the playoffs. However, like, I think once you get into the playoffs, not having Tatis there is going to be a damper. I mean, he's just, he's such an impact, but like right now, I mean, who's the biggest threat to the wild card spot that's not in it? Is it
Like
Brewers,
St. Louis
Cardinals?
or Milwaukee?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Padres without Tatis are better than them, and they're already 1 second.
So the Padres, they actually currently hold the third wild card spot, and the Brewers are 2 games behind. So they are only in a playoff spot by 2 games. So crazier things can happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, I guess 0 back in the loss column, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, crazier things have happened. But yeah, it is closer than I thought, I will say. Yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, the Padres, I should look at what their latest stretch is. So they were 46-31, and now they're 64-51. So they're 18-20 over the last 38 games. So as you mentioned, yeah, 500 mediocre ball, which is not something you want. Trying to get a playoff spot. But yeah, anyway, going back to the point, I think it makes me think they're much less dangerous in a playoff series.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, how is this going to affect Fernando Tatis? Like, I mean, I think this is something that's going to stay with him for the rest of his life. I think people will always hold on to it, but I do think, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but I do think he's young enough where he can find a way to get people to forget about this down the line at some point.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
First of all, Fernando Tatis Jr. should, he should be very happy that he's already signed a 14-year contract.
Yes.
So this will not affect him financially whatsoever. I mean, he's not going to get paid during the 80-game suspension, but
yeah, whatever. That's a loss of 1% of his salary.
Yeah, exactly. And this is like, the deal is more backloaded, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, like, so that's good for him. And yeah, Tatis is 23, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, it's almost like he sort of gets a fresh start. Like, he's had some good seasons, he's had some injury problems, which case in point this year. But like, he still has age 24 on. He still has probably like 15 seasons to add to his legacy. And it's like with people with every year at the Hall of Fame discussion, it's like, oh, this guy PED user. What I will say, I'll get out in front of this 20 years before we're talking about Fernando Tatis Jr. potentially in the Hall of Fame. I think, yeah, I think as long as he performs like he was performing before the suspension and doesn't get popped again, I don't think this should affect his Hall of Fame case whenever that happens.
Yeah. I mean, spoiler alert, I don't think he's ever been on a Major League Baseball field while under the influence of steroids of any sort. I think this is straight up just an injury thing. So there's probably no reason to believe that he won't perform the same way that he was before the injury, or before the before the injury and the PED suspension. But it is good that this happens now in his career and not later, because if this happens at age 30 or so, you know, we have to question if everything up to that point has been legit, and we have to remember it for the rest of his career. If it happens like towards the end of his career, like mid 30s, maybe even like 40s, you have to question, like, I mean, we don't have to question because I think most of us will know, but people are going to question his entire career and how legitimately we can look at it and how much we can appreciate it. The sense this is happening now, he's going to get tested the rest of his career. Like people will, if he hits a home run in June of next year, there's going to be those people like, oh, he's still using, he's still on the roids. He's going to be getting tested. If anything, he's going to be tested more frequently now than anything. Like every single time he hits a home run now, random PED test. Every 440-foot bomb he hits, ooh, we're going to need to see one. We're going to need to see another one. Real quick.
Exactly. And as you mentioned, this is much better than getting where this happens in your at age 30 or late 30s. The examples there are Ryan Braun, who he had just won an MVP. He was in his late 20s. He had a good resume. Like he had a rookie of the year under his belt. Great career up to the point of him, I think having a positive test or something like that. And, just having to be suspended for like a year. Or late 30s, Robinson Cano.
Yep.
He got popped twice. So, I mean, that's just no question. He's not getting in.
Which is unfortunate because he had such an easy case.
Yes.
For second baseman.
Yes. I mean, upper 60s wins above replacement. Just fantastic player, defensively and offensively. But anyway, I mean, he was having an easy Hall of Fame career. I think he got suspended in 2018. And then again in 2021. So I mean, and he wasn't recovering from any injuries. He probably was using for most of his career, if I had to guess. If he popped twice.
Do we know that though? Like,
you don't know that, but it's
he's
like
the whole thing. Like he debuted the year that steroid testing was implemented. Did he not?
Yeah, but I mean, there's
I don't know. Was he really getting away with it for nearly 15 years?
There are 750 players to test. So I mean, you can't test crazy frequently. It's not like they're pissing into a cup every week. I think he just and maybe it was a thing where he didn't use until later in his career, but I don't know, you kind of have, I guess you have to make up your own story with things like that. But I don't know. That's a discussion for another day, I guess. But back to Tatis. Yeah, this shouldn't affect him in any way.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the Robinson Cano point, let's just say he did not touch a needle until 2018. Let's just say that. That's way past his prime, right? He had solidified a Hall of Fame case before then. And now we're just talking about how he's not going in because of those two tests. That really does crush your entire legacy. And I think Fernando still has time to rebuild his. Robinson Cano did not.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if you're thinking about is this gonna affect his legacy? Maybe next year, maybe the year after. But Nelson Cruz got suspended for PEDs in 2013, and he was having a fantastic 2019 and 2020. And no one brought that up. Frankie Montas has been one of the best pitchers of the past couple of years. He got suspended in 2019 for PEDs. No one mentions that ever. So, I mean, I know it's different when you're a superstar like Fernando Tatis Jr. and you have a much brighter spotlight on you, but I think people will forget about this in a few years.
I think everyone except for Dodger fans.
True.
They're the only ones that haven't forgiven the Astros, or not even forgiven. I don't even want to say forgiven. I think people just stopped caring about that for the most part. I'd say if you asked all like baseball fans our age if they still like are mad at the Astros, I think most of them are gonna say no, they don't care. Not that they forgive them, but it's like, yeah, it's whatever. Dodger fans are the opposite. They're like, no, like we still should have won that 2017 World Series. Like Jose Altuve still sucks and all of that stuff.
Yeah. I guess they do have the most reason to be bitter, but
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Even mostly Yankee fans stopped like Yankee fans like the age of us basically, for the most part, really don't care about that anymore. Like some of
yeah,
them were begging to sign Carlos Correa last offseason, and some of them will probably be willing to do the same this offseason because he's probably going to opt out.
yeah, exactly. And I think, I mean, part of that also was the Astros were a game away from the World Series the next year. Then they went to the World Series the year after that. And now they have what, the best record in the AL, or like
Yep.
tied.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
if they if they got caught and then were a last place team from there on out,
Then it's fair.
then it's like, wow. But no.
Yeah, I mean, and that sort of just proves Fernando's case. Like, if you could just go out and still do your thing, like
Exactly.
people are not gonna care. It's like, oh, Fernando Tatis Jr. is clean and he's putting up 150 weighted runs created plus every single year with elite defensive base running. Whatever.
Yeah.
Who cares if he was trying to heal from an injury that one time?
Exactly.
I do
Exactly.
want to get into, because I was talking about this on Twitter yesterday, and some people were kind of upset at me for it, which is weird. But is it outrageous to say that the climate around steroid use in baseball is just different now than it was in the 90s and 2000s? I don't think that's a crazy case to make.
Yeah, no, it's
Like,
not.
when
Yeah.
was the last time? Okay, like when you think of Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Manny Ramirez, like, what do you think their motives were for taking steroids? And what do you think, I don't know, Frankie Montas or Fernando Tatis Jr. or Nelson Cruz, or maybe not Nelson Cruz, but like Frankie Montas, like what were their motives? D. Gordon, that's a good one. Adalberto
Yeah.
Mondesi.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's such a different king.
I think part of it also back then was like these guys were setting records, and they were bigger than baseball for a little bit.
Physically.
Yeah, physically. And and they were like, just injecting testosterone into themselves instead of like
Yeah.
using a pill for ringworm.
I was gonna say, when was the last time someone got popped for human growth hormone?
Exactly.
It was probably like there was a lot of people suspended for steroids in like 2012, 2013. You think of like A-Rod was obviously the big one, Nelson Cruz, which was mentioned, Melky Cabrera, Bartolo Colon, like all of those guys. That was like there was like a big bunch, like group of steroid users back then, Ryan Braun as well. And then from like 2014 on, it's been these cases where people are like trying to recover from stuff and they happen to accidentally take something with steroids. Like D. Gordon was an example that I thought about. Adalberto Mondesi was one. Irvin Santana was one. Frankie Montas, and now Fernando Tatis Jr., who happens just to be, a superstar pitcher that, is on that list now.
Yeah, I think part of it is when it's like 1998, you can't go anywhere without hearing about the home run race, and it's like, wow, they're actually gonna break this 37-year record. It's gonna be crazy. And you got Sosa and McGwire going at it, and then 3 years later, Barry Bonds is going after that record, and then a few years after that, it's like, oh my god, and from their perspective, this was all fake. How am I gonna believe in baseball? What about my heroes? With this, it's like, and also part of it is like visually, if you look at 1995 Bonds compared to 2004 Bonds, it's very obvious of like, yes, this was very different. Fernando Tatis Jr., I mean, he looks very normal.
Yeah, I would say like people always look at like the side-by-side pictures of like, Barry Bonds in 1986 versus 2004, Mark McGwire with the A's versus with the Cardinals. Like, just show me a picture of Fernando Tatis Jr. in like 2017 versus now. I guarantee you it's virtually the same. Like maybe he looks older and like a little more jacked, but it's not just outrageous.
Yeah, D. Gordon went from 160 pounds to 162 pounds.
He went from an 040 ISO to an 075.
He was a monster. He was an absolute. He was superhuman. D. Gordon was.
Yeah, it's such a different thing now. Like no one's testing positive because they're like, I want to hit 50 home runs this year.
Exactly.
Like that just is not. You can like if I'm ever proven wrong, I'll admit to it. If someone ever openly says it, I'll believe it. But I truly believe no one is testing positive because they're trying to be better at certain aspects of baseball.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to be a real idiot to get popped in this day and age. Like there are so many resources available to you to check to make sure that you're not taking anything illegal without knowing. And I think, there have been like a lot of steroid cases that have been stopped because of this. Like I'd be willing to bet, I obviously we'll never know for sure, but I'd be willing to bet there have been dozens of Major League Baseball players that have almost accidentally taken something, but they checked beforehand to be like, oh, that has, insert substance here. Like I'm not using that.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I guess the pendulum swings both ways there. We're like, yes, Major League Baseball has amazing resources and probably has every list of ingredient very accessible to not take and not get tested positive for. However, there's probably, so many more illegal things than there were at the start of
definitely
of all this. So I mean, I think the pendulum swings, whereas like
it almost seems like a minefield.
Back in like 2005, it's like just lay off the human growth hormone and you will be fine. Whereas like now it's like don't take this thing that's 17 letters and is in 2 font in on the back of this pill bottle.
Exactly. Just a note, like the drug that Fernando Tatis Jr. like tested positive for, like it's literally, if you Google it, it's for healing wounds. Like that's why you use it.
Yep.
Yeah. Like why would like for people that are gonna say cheater, like do 5 seconds of research.
Exactly.
Like cheating to get healthy faster. Like what an outrageous thing to do. Not a team player.
Well, actually, I have a grandmother on a steroid, and she did it to hit 50 home runs and not to heal wounds.
Yeah, and I didn't see her in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, every Thanksgiving I call her a cheater. But yeah, different steroids mean different things.
I don't know why I had to like hold on. I tweeted like something of that, of that topic yesterday where I was like, steroid use is different now from where it was in the early 2000s, and like, there's still no excuse for guys like Tatis and whatever. And someone I didn't even bother with this, but someone goes, "How do you know this? Where's your scientific proof?" It's like, it's common sense.
Yeah.
Like just look at the drugs they're testing positive for and look at the drugs they were testing positive for in the 90s and early 2000s. Like you really want to tell me that, Mark McGwire was using human growth hormone so he could heal quicker? I don't think that's how that works.
No.
And like I said, do you really think that Fernando Tatis Jr. is using a drug that heals wounds so that he can hit a ball 50 feet further? I don't think he is.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Yeah, it's just the differences are very much present, and all you have to do is look at some pictures, most likely.
It takes a quick Google search.
Yeah. So all right, so that was the topic. That was the big news of the week. Fernando Tatis Jr. He's out for this year and probably for the first month of next year, and
42 games.
Yeah, first 42 games of next year, so like a month and a half ish, maybe 2 months. And then he will be back in the Padres lineup finally, unless he finds another injury. Hopefully not. Fingers crossed.
It's going to be very interesting when he returns because, normally when a guy return, like Fernando Tatis Jr.'s return was supposed to be like a very hyped up thing where it's like he's back from his injury. Fernando Tatis Jr. rejoins the Padres. It's gonna be really awkward come May of next year. Like,
Yeah.
it'll definitely get some media attention quite a bit probably, but it's not gonna be the same as like when DeGrom came back the other week.
Right. Yeah, it's like it's gonna be interesting. He's probably gonna, definitely at Dodger Stadium, he'll get booed and whatever, that's standard. He'll probably get he'll probably get sparse boos from other stadiums, but
I think come like 25, people are gonna forget outside of the Dodgers.
yeah, I agree.
I think even the Giants mostly won't care. They'll be like, I mean, the Giants have not a lot of room to be upset about a guy taking steroids.
Yeah, but I mean, as you mentioned, especially if he's putting up 6-7 win seasons, with
Consistently.
and is just doing exactly what he was doing before this suspension, that'll silence everybody very quickly.
Yeah.
All right, so that was the topic of the week. Fun news, but the biggest thing that happened for Daniel and I this week was we got to talk to kind of our stat icon, our stat masterson. Shout out to Dennis Eckersley for
our sabermetrician idol.
Yes, our sultan of stat. Yeah, Sarah Langs, a writer and reporter and just general stat finder for MLB.com. If you go to Baseball Savant's front page, you'll most likely find an article by her that's very insightful, and you'll probably learn a lot.
Yeah, just click anything on the Baseball Savant front page about Juan Soto, and you'll find her.
Yes, you will, and you'll also find her tweets. Her tweets are regularly retweeted by the Major League Baseball Twitter account. So she's a very big influence. We always reference her stats, and I mean, it was a long time in the making. A long time in the making for us getting this interview. I mean, we contacted her, a month ago or so. But this was great. Daniel, how'd you feel about this interview?
It was very cool. I mean, I think it's awesome that from now on we'll always get to say, ARR alum Sarah Lang said blah blah blah.
Yes,
I'm very excited for the first one of those.
Yes, we do. So now let's get into it. Our interview with Sarah Langs. And now we are here joined by Sarah Langs. You may know her from the front page of Baseball Savant, as we scroll that website every single day, and also her work with Major League Baseball and MLB.com. How you doing, Sarah?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you. This is a baseball and sabermetrics based podcast, and Chris and I try to get our own stats quite a lot, and very often we'll defer to other people's stats, and a lot of the time it's your work. So we're very excited to have you on.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. Glad to help out with the podcast, I guess.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, many sentences in our podcast history have started with Sarah Langs had a tweet, and then this
oh my gosh,
a great statistic. So yeah, we go to you for definitely statistics we either can't find, or just don't have the ability to find, and we're always amazed. So we're wondering where your evolution in baseball statistics, because obviously statistics evolve, and I think I grew up knowing like average home runs, RBI, and then you go into more advanced statistics, and now with Baseball Savant we have and StatCast we have so much. So where did you kind of start with knowing baseball statistics, and where did it go from there?
For me, it definitely started with the normal kind of back of the baseball card, like you were describing. But for me, it really evolved to be more than that when I started doing internships and getting into my first job, which was with ESPN Stats and Info. And when I was working there, obviously, we were going much further beyond just a slash line or ERA or anything like that. So it was kind of contingent upon myself to figure out what those other stats were. I mean, at that point, I knew WAR because I'd been online. I read stories on Fangraphs anywhere, but I didn't necessarily know as much of the ins and outs of all that was possible. And while I was working there, it became clear that there was just such a treasure trove of different stats that were available. The fact that we could describe and measure pretty much every aspect of the game. So I would say that's how I got from the back of baseball cards to where I am now.
In all the time that you've been frequenting, sites like Baseball Reference, Fangraphs, Baseball Savant, all the classic statistics websites, is there any particular page that you just like in some part have memorized because you've been there so many times? Like I can tell you, 298, 444, 607, 1051 is Barry Bonds' career slash line. Do you have anything like that?
Oh my gosh, I'm not sure if I have a specific page like that, but I do know, like, I look into Juan Soto stats all the time. So I can tell you, as of this recording, he has 119 career home runs. He has 469 walks. He had 31 career games with at least 3 walks, things like that. But for me, it's almost just which pages am I on the most? And I would say certainly Soto's page, but more than that, the game feed page on Baseball Savant every single day, keeping track of, leaderboards during live games. And of course, just like the landing page on StatHead with all of the finders.
One world Daniel and I haven't dove into is the world of Elias Sports Bureau. It's always, we didn't have this written down, but like Elias Sports Bureau always amazes us. It's like the one level that people like Daniel and I can't get to. How much like experience in how much have you dove into the world of like Elias Sports Bureau, and like can you tell us like at all like what it looks like?
Sure. So you don't actually see anything really with Elias, but I've been interacting with them my entire professional life, that takes on sending them an email or calling their number and saying, hey, I have this question. And for those who don't know, the Elias Sports Bureau is the official statistician of Major League Baseball. So they have access to things that go back all time further than a Baseball Reference or Fangraphs or anywhere like that, in terms of, 1893 was the year the mound was moved to its current distance. So they can tell you who had a 10 strikeout game that year, which is something you can't find elsewhere, all these other things. So I interact with them pretty frequently. It's actually a team of researchers like myself who have access to a treasure trove. I assume they code everything, but I've never actually seen the data itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the Elias Sports Bureau is like the sixth Infinity Stone. Like it's the ultimate, it's the last one, it's the hardest one to get, but yeah, and they always provide some really good stuff that obviously you can't get anywhere else, and seeing everything from there is just very cool. Are there any other sports besides baseball that you like to analyze statistically?
At the moment, I wouldn't claim that I do that for other sports. I mean, in my previous job, I had to be a researcher for every sport, and not just the 4 major sports in North America, but UFC and tennis, which I do love tennis. And I love all sports, certainly all the team sports in the US. As I mentioned, big tennis fan, college football, you name it. But at the moment, I don't really research those just because I don't have the time. But back in the day, I was building graphics for SportsCenter on James Harden or Alabama football or what have you.
Yeah. That I mean, being at worldwide leader makes a lot of sense that you would delve into all the significant sports, all the significant sports stories. So as mentioning your professional career, this question could go either way. What's your favorite memory as a baseball fan or baseball media person?
That's a really good question. I'm really lucky to say that I've been in a lot of really cool situations, gotten to cover a lot of really cool games. But I think if I were to pick one thing, I would say as a fan, I got to go to the All-Star game in 2013 when it was at Citi Field. I grew up a Mets fan, and my parents always said, okay, if the Mets host, we will find a way to get there. And we were all the way up in the upper deck in left field, barely there, but we were there. And I'd watched every All-Star game on TV that I could remember in my life. And being able to go and be there, and they did the little things that were unique to Mets games, but it was on a national stage. And I remember thinking that was a really, really cool moment. So I'm really grateful that I got to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that game is most remembered for was it was Mariano Rivera's last All-Star game. I mean, what was that entrance like in person? The Enter Sandman, everyone's going crazy. I know that Edwin Diaz's entrance has got a lot of people talking right now, but that was one of the original just staple entrances by a closer. And to see that at an All-Star game, that must have been really special.
Yeah, it was a really cool moment. And they brought him in the eighth to make sure he would get to pitch no matter what, and that this situation would be kind of controlled, if I remember correctly. And it was a really cool moment, everybody on their feet. And as you said, Edwin Diaz has been a very popular topic of conversation lately with the trumpets, which are really fun in person as well. But you go back to Enter Sandman for Mariano Rivera, or Hell's Bells for Trevor Hoffman. And those were kind of the beginnings of what we see now. But certainly that moment in the All-Star game was really, really cool.
Chris and I grew up with Darude Sandstorm from Koji Uhara in 2013. One of the probably the best reliever season I've ever seen, like throughout the entire year. And I was just thinking about this the other day because around that time with Koji, I was in middle school and I was in band and I played trumpet, and I was like, man, if Edwin Diaz was on the 2013 Red Sox, like I would have tried to learn that and failed.
That's funny. That's really funny. I wonder if there are kids now who are playing trumpet and all of a sudden feel that much cooler because they're like, oh, maybe Edwin needs me,
If I was still playing trumpet and like I was at that level of fandom with the Mets as I was with the Red Sox at the time, I would have tried. I can't promise you I would have succeeded. I was okay at trumpet back then, but I definitely would have made an effort.
Yeah, I wonder if trumpets are allowed in baseball stadiums, and if not, Citi Field might have to make a quick exception for
only Mr. and Mrs. Met as of right now. That's what we know.
They have theirs.
Yeah, I think they got enough. They got enough power to carry the stadium. I think they'll be all right on their own. But so as we go into, I guess, the current baseball realm, a lot of interesting topics this season, and there's always, with going into statistics, you can always find somebody that's very interesting, or maybe, when looking at their statistics, you're like, oh, maybe, I don't know why this player is not getting more attention. Who are some players on your radar that you think haven't been getting the attention that they deserve or will get eventually?
Well, one who's starting to get more attention lately, and I think will continue to do so, is Adley Rutschman. So when he first came up, his hitting wasn't great. But after those first 2-3 weeks or so, he's been really, really good. And of course, he's great behind the plate. He's already one of the top all around catchers in all of baseball. He is in the top 7, I believe, or top 9 in weighted runs created plus since June 15th. He's tied for the second most defensive runs saved at catcher, and everybody else on that list, either ahead of him or tied with him, has caught at least 20 more innings than he has. So I think this is who he was supposed to be. And often with top prospects, if they're not incredible from day one, we kind of take a step back and let them figure it out. But at this point, he has 100% figured it out. And it's really, really cool to see a player like that, just get to that level where he is performing the way that was expected. And this is what a top prospect is supposed to be.
Yeah, it's been truly unbelievable because in many, it's not uncommon for top prospects to come up to the majors and struggle at first. Even Adley did it. Just about everybody does it. And when you look at prospects in the stage, it's not uncommon for them to be able to figure some things out, but still have things to work on. Like, I think Julio Rodriguez is the other top prospect that has really been showing to pan out this year. And even with him, there are some things where you can say that he can improve. I don't know what Adley needs to do to improve other than just do it over a larger sample at this point.
Yeah, I think he just has to keep doing what he is doing, which is really great to see. And of course, the Orioles have been a lot of fun to watch, especially lately. And it's really cool to see them led by this young catcher. I mean, the last team I can think of led by a young catcher was the 2010 Giants with Buster Posey, but even that team had so many other great players. And the Orioles have other good players, but it's really cool to see Rutschman kind of at the top of that list.
How soon do you think we can be seeing him as a consensus top catcher in baseball?
It's a really good question. I was talking about this the other day. And when I did my top 10 catchers entering the year for MLB Network, I put him at number 10. He had never played in the majors, but I was thinking that even, a half or a third of a season of him was probably better than the next name I was going to grab there at catcher. And that's because catching is a really difficult position. We don't have that many guys in the game right now. We're really good on both sides of the ball at that position. Wilson Contreras is a really good offensive catcher, not so much defensively. JT Realmuto is probably the best overall all around, but he hasn't had his typical season. And I think Will Smith is the guy who is expected to take that next step this year. And he's been good, but maybe not outstanding. So I would believe that within the next 2 or 3 years, we're basically talking about Will Smith and Adley Rutschman. Sean Murphy is another guy who will be up there moving forward, and you never know kind of who else is coming down the pipe. But I think it's really the next generation after Realmuto and Yasmani Grandal.
Yeah. The catcher conversation is always interesting because, it definitely requires excellence at on both sides of the ball because of how impactful a catcher's defense can be. Also in the regular base or the current baseball realm, obviously the trade deadline just passed a week ago as we record. And there were some huge trades, obviously, with Juan Soto going to San Diego and Luis Castillo going to Seattle. Plenty of implications there, but we're curious to see what you think the most impactful move is outside of, like, the big blockbusters.
Well, I'm not sure if it's one single move, but I really liked what the Twins went out and did. They addressed pitching from a number of different sides, getting Jorge Lopez, Tyler Mahle, and Michael Fulmer. And this was a team that entering the year, everyone sort of expected did not have nearly enough pitching. And to their credit, they've led the division pretty much all year. The White Sox have been disappointing. The Guardians have been kind of teetering, getting close, but they're very young. But for the Twins, they really needed some reinforcements in the pitching arena. Hitting wise, they have Carlos Correa, they have Byron Buxton. They're in a good spot there. But I thought that they did a really good job of getting a couple of guys who are going to be really impactful. I mean, I don't think people are aware of just how good Fulmer has been. He's only allowed one barrel all year, so that's like a batted ball with the ideal combination of launch angle and exit velocity. His barrel rate is 0.9%, 111 batted balls against him, and just one of them has been barreled. So I think having him, having Mahle, who is a proven enough starter at this point, it just gives them the type of depth that they didn't really have.
Yeah, the market on Tyler Mahle was I thought it was oddly quiet leading up to the trade, and I'm definitely glad that a team like the Twins went out and got him. I mean, he gets reunited with Sonny Gray, former teammate in Cincinnati. And one thing that I referenced going into the season with him was from a pitching standpoint, I'm just pulling this up to confirm it, but I believe he had the second lowest road ERA last year behind just Corbin Burns. And I think moving from Cincinnati to Minnesota is going to play a huge role for him.
Definitely. I mean, we know Great American Small Park. He can definitely be difficult to pitch in Cincinnati. And he's a guy who's interesting. I mean, people have always really liked his stuff. And I think most of that rated a little bit better last year than it had so far this year. But overall, if you look at stuff like expected stats and whatever else, he's been good. He's certainly been better than the 4.49 ERA that he has so far this year. And again, he's a guy who will be there just to give them another option, because they have a really interesting rotation, as you said, with Bundy there, Chris Archer, who it's great to see Chris Archer, back contributing in the majors. I really like watching him. And it's just been good to see him a part of this team. And then Joe Ryan, who is, of course, so much fun. And then you go beyond that, and there's guys like Griffin Jackson, so on and so forth. But I think it's just really good to get a guy like Mahle in the mix as well for them.
I'm very sad that Bailey Ober was not able to stay healthy this year, because he was one of my Twins players to watch this year. Had excellent strikeout to walk numbers. And yeah, unfortunately, he just wasn't able to stay on the field. But that's another option for them beyond this year.
Definitely. I mean, they have such an interesting team, and I think they really do a good job with player development lately. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes moving forward, whether Carlos Correa opts out, and if he does, what the team looks like next year. But I think people have to remember that no one was picking the Twins to win this division. Everyone gave it to the White Sox and said there was no question. And I just love to see a team surprise people and be at the point where at the trade deadline, they knew that they had to reload even further to try to make a deep run.
Right. With the, you mentioned the Jorge Lopez trade. He's been a guy who's really evolved this year. We've talked about him on the show. I mean, basic numbers right now. He's at a 1.68 ERA, 2.99 FIP, had a major increase in fastball velocity. But also he had 2 more years of control. So it kind of put the Orioles in a conundrum because, they could have had him for the next 2 years. What did you think about the Orioles' approach, trading him even with all that control?
Yeah, I know that it was a source of contention for some fans, certainly some Orioles fans. But I think overall, the team and Mike Elias were looking toward the future, and they were able to get back some good minor leaguers with him and with Trey Mancini and with those trades overall. And yes, the Orioles have been a really fun surprise this season, and you never know what a season is going to lead to, but the odds that they were going to win the World Series this year are probably pretty low. The Yankees, the Dodgers, the Padres, the Mets are all really, really good. And I think given that, you should, if you're in a front office, you're thinking about what is the best thing we can do for the future of the franchise. So I wasn't surprised they did it. Again, I know some fans were upset, but hey, they've continued to win. So it doesn't seem to have had a huge effect to this point anyway.
Yeah, that's also a team with a lot of bullpen depth. And Felix Bautista is a guy that's broken out this year. He's had some excellent strikeout numbers. Off the top of my head, Joey Crable, I know, was a guy preseason or like early season that was doing so. Yeah, even without Lopez, this is a team that has a lot of good relievers with control.
Absolutely. And yeah, you mentioned Batista, who frequently shows up at the top of the Avila leaderboard for any given day. He's a lot of fun to watch.
So trade deadline just passed. Another piece of baseball news, definitely more on the unfortunate side, was the passing of Vin Scully. And I was wondering if you had any particular Vin Scully memories. I mean, he announced up until the mid 2010s. Any particular favorite moments of Vin Scully?
Absolutely. I mean, I was raised with a very strong understanding and appreciation of baseball history. My parents are huge baseball fans and really, made sure that I was aware of baseball's past from early on when it became clear I wanted to be a fan. And I can remember my father telling me about Vin Scully's call for Sandy Koufax's perfect game, which is one of the many that has gone viral over this last week here. The very famous 2-2 to Harvey Keene. He says the date, the time, describes everything, really paints that picture. And then the perfect game happens. And I can just remember that 2-2 to Harvey Keene. I remember my father telling me about that, and that kind of just becoming a thing where when I saw 2s, when I saw 2-2s, I would think of it. So that's certainly one that stands out to me. I mean, even that final game he called, the Charlie Culberson walk-off, that was really cool. I was working at ESPN at that point, so watching that at work is very memorable for me. But what a legend. What a true legend.
Yeah, I mean, he was just a very special person to baseball history. 67 years in the booth is just stunning.
I mean, it's incredible. And to bring that team from Brooklyn to LA, be in 2 of the biggest media markets, and for no one to ever get tired of you. I mean, we heard it. We know why nobody got tired of him, but it's impossible to think of someone else having that kind of staying power today. And that's no disrespect to anyone who is an announcer involved in this world, but it's incredibly difficult to not become stale over that period of time.
I know that you had a tweet like just after the fact about how you were really appreciating all of the East Coast baseball fans that were telling their Vin Scully stories, because towards the end of his career was when streaming was becoming a thing and people were able to access every team. So I figured I'd tell some of mine, because I'm an East Coast baseball fan that grew up at the tail end of Vin Scully's career. I'd say for the last 3 years of his career, I had MLB TV, and the Dodgers became my West Coast team of choice because of him. And my favorite was, it was my 15th birthday, and the Dodgers were playing the Braves, and Johnny Gomes was up for Atlanta. And as a Red Sox fan, Johnny Gomes is just a very special player to me. What he did for the Red Sox in 2013 is never going to be forgotten by me. Just to see him come up, I'm already pretty engaged. And Vin starts talking about how he was attacked by a wolf as a child, just very casually during the at-bat, like it was nothing. And there's so many crazy stories from Johnny's life, and that was one that I was not aware of. And I was definitely very taken aback by that. And just the way that he was casually going around being like, and then he was attacked by a wolf, and the 0-1, that's in there for a strike, and then keeps going. It made me laugh, and it's my favorite Vin moment of all time.
That was such a great story. That's one of the many that I feel like went viral last week when the news came out. And very cool that you remember listening to it on your birthday. But I love that you saw that tweet and resonated with that, because it was really cool for me to see people who are basically between the ages of 18 and 35 or so, tweeting about how they would fall asleep listening to Dodgers games living on the East Coast. And it's such a testament to MLB.TV. I mean, I'm not trying to be a company woman here, but it really is. And also the DirecTV extra innings package, and the fact that people are able to hear him beyond just the national game of the week he would do, or the postseason that he would do. So I think what's so amazing about baseball is that a random weekday Wednesday night Dodger game can be as impactful to someone listening to it as the Kirk Gibson home run. And the fact that people are now able to access those moments of Vin Scully with the advent of streaming and all of these, cable packages, I just think that's really cool and did so much for his legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we talk about, baseball history, Vin Scully, obviously a major impact on it, calling games for both Sandy Koufax and Clayton Kershaw, that obviously runs a long time. So we have our our last question that we're asking to every guest. We've so far asked it to Chris Rose and Mark Simon. So our last question is,
did we real quick, did we ask it to Amy Crawford?
We didn't, so I guess we'll have to have her
we
back
gotta
on.
okay, we gotta interview her again then.
Yeah.
Former coworker of yours, of course.
So the last question we ask our guests is, if you could get the StatCast data for any player in baseball history pre-StatCast era, who would it be?
Willie Mays. I want to know how far his home runs went. I want to know how hard he hit the ball. I want to know all of that. I think that was my instinctual answer, so I'll go with it. But now I'm like, should I have said Roberto Clemente to know how hard he threw the ball? But we'll go with Willie Mays. I mean, I would love to know how many feet of home runs he hit during his 4-homer game, and his arm as well, and just everything he did in the outfield, get us some catch probability on the famous catch, all of that.
The most unfair part about that question, and I realize this every single time we ask it, is that you can only pick one player in the answer, because you can go 1,000 different routes. Like Chris and I made our top 10 lists a year ago on this subject, and The number one person I had was Walter Johnson, because I mean
Nice. Yep.
it's such a
the
different era.
famous Velo.
There's
Yeah.
I mean the velo, like I want to know what he was throwing in 1913. That was considered the fastest in the league. It's such a different time. I think Chris had Nolan Ryan as his number one,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
just two entirely different eras. Willie Mays is a little closer to Nolan Ryan, but yeah, there are so many routes you can go to that. And I think Willie Mays is a good answer.
What have other people said, if you remember?
I
Chris
remember
Rose, yeah, Chris Rose had Dave Winfield, and I
Okay.
believe Mark Simon had Keith Hernandez.
he did.
That sounds like him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Lover of the 80s Mets.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that question. Keep asking people because I want to hear what they have to say.
We definitely need to keep like a Google Doc or something, because yeah. I mean, I would like to imagine in this hypothetical, you're getting like percentile rankings, you're getting like illustrator
Yeah.
charts. Like you can
Yeah.
you can just click on. I'd imagine Walter Johnson with like 500 batted balls against in one season with one home run allowed, and what that would
Yeah.
look like on like a radical chart.
I'm imagining
Illustrated chart.
fastball usage is about 86%.
Oh
Yeah.
my
Um,
gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of routes to go with that question for sure. And yeah, love having another answer to that question. So Daniel and I are now not the only people to have a podcast in this conversation. You just started a new one. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
For sure. So my best friend and coworker at MLB.com, Mandy Bell, and I actually now have two podcasts. So on Mondays, we are part of Ballpark Dimensions, which is Mike Petrillo and Matt Myers' podcast on MLB.com. That's kind of, we wrap up the weekend. We talk about our favorite moments in baseball from the past week, and just kind of your traditional topics. We also have another podcast with MLB Originals, which launched last week, called Fielding Questions. That podcast is kind of a deep dive on different specific baseball topics like superstitions, ballpark food, mascots, so on and so forth. And the fun thing with that one is that we talk to a lot of players, or some of our fellow reporters did. So in superstitions, we talked to like Jordan Luplow, and for ballpark food, we had some really funny quotes from Andrew Chafin. That one's not out yet, but we recorded it recently. So if anyone wants to check those out, you can find them on MLB.com.
I was actually just listening to the superstitions episode before this, and like
Oh, thank
they
you.
bring out the best and worst of people. Like it's so dependent on the case, the person. It can either be something that works and you love it, or it's just something that makes you miserable, but you just got to keep going with it because it works.
And it's such a baseball thing. And I feel like baseball fans end up even more superstitious than any other sports fans. So it's crazy how that kind of permeates the whole sport.
Yeah, and it's not even a fan thing. Like it's a player thing too. Like I don't
Yeah.
think like baseball players definitely get asked about superstitions more than most athletes.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So yeah, Sarah Langs, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this. It's kind of, I know we just contacted you recently, but it is kind of like a long time in the making for Daniel and I, because we've referenced your tweets as long as the podcast has gone back. So yeah, love having you on, and yeah, good luck with everything for the rest of the season.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And that was our interview with Sarah Langs. Great discussion on herself and the general baseball world. Her perspective is a quality perspective for us, and gotta love talking baseball with Sarah Langs. I think she brought up some good points about that Twins trade deadline. I mean, I didn't know Michael Fulmer only had 1 barrel allowed this year.
That was very cool. I think that unfortunately since then he has gotten roughed up a little bit. I know that he did give up a home run, but that's not important.
Yeah, but we did.
It was
we
true
did
at the
rec-
time. It might still be true. That home run might not have been a barrel. I'm gonna check his Savant page right now.
Yeah, maybe it was a old 42-degree launch angle
Yeah, he
home
does.
run.
He has still okay. He has given up 2 barrels, but hey, 2 barrels is 2 barrels.
2 barrels is 2 barrels.
So
And
1.7% barrel rate. That's really good.
yeah, so we recorded we recorded that a few days ago. So maybe some of the stats are a little off, but the narrative stays the same.
But same idea.
Same idea. So yeah, what are we getting into next? What we got?
So let's talk about the Tigers sticking in the AL Central here. They've had a really disappointing season. You know, they had some expectations coming into this year. They were kind of hovering 500 between May 8th and the end of last season. They added Eduardo Rodriguez and Javier Baez and Austin Meadows in the offseason, and it's just been a miserable year in Detroit. And there is a little bit of consolation though for Detroit fans, and it's that Al Avila, after 7 miserable seasons as the GM of the Detroit Tigers, is being released of his duties. He has been fired.
Yeah. Yeah, it's miserable is yeah, how you can describe it for sure. Yeah, Tigers haven't made the playoff, did not make the playoffs once. Yeah, they didn't make the playoffs once in his tenure. Which, they were rebuilding, but it shouldn't take 7 years to fully rebuild. And they kind of had, there was some hope with the Tigers last year. They in from like May on, they were above 500. And they had, Torkelson coming up, Riley Green coming up. But this year has been, and they ended up signing Eduardo Rodriguez and Javier Baez. And this year has been a huge flop, and decided to change some upper management.
Yeah, this is a move that was much needed. Since the start of the 2016 season, which was Al Avila's first full year as the Tigers GM, the Tigers have a record of 404 and 576. That is the second worst record in Major League Baseball over that time. Only the Baltimore Orioles have a worse record, and at least Oriole fans have made the playoffs in this time, and they have something to be excited about right now. Detroit almost made the playoffs in 2016, and that's just about it for them. They've had the worst record in baseball twice, and they have the second worst record in the American League right now. They talked about trading Tarek Skubal at the deadline last year, which was one of the pieces that they got from their rebuild. And I mean, when it gets to the point where you're trading pieces that you traded for in a rebuild, like that's where you know it's over.
Exactly. Like, yeah, when you're thinking of, I mean, also, yeah, when you're thinking about trading a guy who has 4.5 more years of control, it's just, yeah, it's not right. I mean, they were expected to do much better this year. Some of it does lie on the players, but like not making the playoffs in 7 years, it's just, that's, you're not going to be able to continue as general manager.
Yeah, I mean, let's even talk about Michael Fulmer, because one of the last moves that Dave Nabrowski made as GM of the Detroit Tigers was trading Yoenis Cespedes to the New York Mets, and in part getting Michael Fulmer in return. Michael Fulmer has since won a Rookie of the Year award and is now on the cusp of becoming a free agent, and he was just dealt at the trade deadline. Like, one of the pieces that they got as part of the rebuild in 2015 is now being traded as part of the rebuild in 2022, and they've had nothing to show for it since then. So that's probably the worst it could ever look.
Yeah. Like you have guys going through their full 6 years of service time.
I need to make sure Mike Fulmer is about to be a free agent. He is, yes.
Being, sold at the deadline. Yeah, like and it's not like the Tigers are a team that's completely unwilling to spend also. I mean, they're
They have been since Mike
well,
Ilitch
yeah,
passed.
in this rebuild process, but I mean, this past offseason they got, Baez and Rodriguez.
Hmm.
And just didn't work out. And yeah, this rebuild hasn't been going exactly how they wanted to. Do you want to talk about what Chris Ilitch, the Tigers owner, talked about?
Yeah, I would love to. The first thing is just avoiding so much accountability. Chris Ilitch, by the way, the Tigers owner, the son of previous owner Mike Ilitch, who passed away in February of 2017. And the Tigers have just had a very different mindset since the passing of Mike Ilitch. They're not spending as much money. They're behaving a lot more like a small market team. In Mike's days, they made the World Series twice. They were a playoff contender every year. Obviously, they never got it done, but I don't think you could ever blame Mike Ilitch for him not winning a World Series with the Tigers.
Yeah,
And
exactly. I mean, look, like that 2013 team, no doubt should have won the World Series.
yeah. And the 2012 team, you could have made a case for the 06 team. Like they had plenty of teams that could have made it, and it just didn't happen. Just wasn't in the cards, and it is what it is. But they just have not even been competitive over the last 6 years. And Chris Ilitch, I think the differences really stand out in this press conference here, where Chris Ilitch met with the media after firing Al Avila, and he was asked about, the times that they've shed payroll over the years, trading away guys like Justin Verlander, guys like Justin Upton, guys like JD Martinez, guys that were staples to the organization for a certain period of time that, went away. Nick Castellanos was another one. And, a lot of those moves did make sense, sure. But when he was asked about that, his response was like, well, I didn't do that. The GM did that, which is just wrong. Like if you're gonna trade a guy like Justin Verlander, who's on that big salary at the time, do you really think that that's only a GM thing? No, of course it's not. Like the owner's got to sign off on something like that. Same thing goes for JD Martinez. Same thing goes for Justin Upton, who they had paid a decent amount of money to. Like it's the lack of accountability within the Tigers front office really showed in this press conference. And the other one was in 2019, Al Avila was extended. Probably not a good idea, in hindsight. Even really at the time, just didn't seem like a good idea. But Chris Ilitch was asked about that, and like if he regrets it, he was like, "Was it 2019? I thought it was 2021." He straight up forgot what year that he extended his GM, which is just flat out embarrassing, and it really just goes to show where the Tigers are as a front office right now.
Yeah, especially headed into a press conference where you should kind of be on your feet.
Mm-hmm.
It is funny to imagine also like Justin Verlander, he's making like 25 million a year, and then he gets traded and Chris Ilitch is just like, wait, what? Who's gonna tell me that this was going on?
Yeah. Not only that, but like I just want to go back to your point about like, being in a press conference, you gotta be on your feet. Being an owner in a press conference, like owners very rarely meet with the media.
Right.
Like they'll do it like at best, an owner will meet with the media like 1 or 2 times a year. Like they are essentially free from accountability at most times. And during the times that they are, Chris Ilitch just did not come prepared.
Yeah, look at like John Henry of the Red Sox. I think after the Mookie Betts trade,
That was the last time he spoke with the media.
he did. Yeah, he straight up hasn't spoken to the media like at all.
Like it's 2.5 years since literally 2.5 years. Like it was around this time because it was February of 2020. We're now in August. It's 6 months. Yeah, it's been 2.5 years since John Henry, the owner of one of the biggest franchises in professional sports, not just the Red Sox, but Liverpool, but Pittsburgh Penguins, he has not spoken to the media since February of 2020.
And yeah, imagine him like in the next month being like, I thought we hired Heim Bloom this year.
Yeah.
And not 2020.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like yeah, kind of embarrassing. I mean, the Tigers have just been like the whole year, just as the kids say, taking a lot of L's.
Yeah,
Taking more.
they really need to clean house in that front office, and I'm glad that, it obviously starts with Al Avila. That was a move that needed to be made years ago, in my opinion, but better late than never. They got it. They did that. And I honestly do think they need to find a guy that prioritizes winning now, because they have talent on the major league roster that can win them some games. They need to, maybe they need better hitting coaches, because their offense has been dreadful all year. They've been underperforming all around. You look at guys like Austin Meadows, who hasn't hit a home run this year, Jamer Candelario, ARR alum Jamer Candelario, but let's be honest, he's been struggling this year. Miguel Cabrera, whatever, like that is what it is. Robbie Grossman struggled this year before he got traded. Jonathan Scove has been struggling offensively this year, even though he's been amazing at defense, according to outs above average. Like
Right.
Javier Baez, who I mentioned, is a slightly alarming. He hasn't performed on offense. They need a lot of work to be done, but I also think they shouldn't enter another rebuild.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's too many. They're already, they're kind of being rewarded for the rebuild with, Riley Green is up. He's I haven't looked at his stats, but I believe he's
been struggling.
Okay, so he's been struggling,
Yeah. But it's major league adjustments. Like, it's whatever.
Like, yeah, Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green are both like 23 and younger.
Mhm.
I mean, they're gonna develop at some point, and no need to enter another rebuild. What I'm curious about is with AJ Hinch. Like, is this sort of letting him off the hook, or is this going to be a sign of he's next?
I don't think so. I mean, AJ Hinch, you look at the roster that he was given in Houston and the roster that he's been given in Detroit, and how can you expect the same thing out of him? You can't. Which leads me into my next point. What if the Tigers go all in and hire Jeff Lunau as their next GM?
Oh man, that would be so fun.
You've already hired AJ Hinch. What harm is it going to do if you hire Jeff Lunau?
Yeah.
You bring the band back together, right? Maybe you sign Carlos Correa in the offseason. Who knows?
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure they were going after him beforehand.
Yeah.
Because he was didn't he like meet with AJ Hinch for lunch during his free agency?
What was that?
Didn't he like meet with AJ Hinch for lunch during his free agency?
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure that was a thing.
Yeah.
Because Carlos Correa has already said he's going to opt out of his contract. Actually, side note, I know this is completely unrelated, but remember last winter when the Orioles were checking in on Correa and everyone was laughing because why would he go to the Orioles?
You broke up for a quick second. Can you say that again?
Yeah. Remember last winter, when the Baltimore Orioles were in on Carlos Correa and people were laughing because why would he go to the Orioles?
Yeah, that's actually very, yeah.
That's like, I mean, you have your answer now. Like, I know, obviously that's a thing for next winter, and this is unrelated to the current topic, but I just wanted to throw that out there because may be relevant at some point.
Yeah, like they're a hot commodity right now.
Because Mike Elias, I'm pretty sure, came from the Astros.
What, the GM?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting. And like, if you're a free agent and you're looking at, there's a potential playoff team here who also has Grayson Rodriguez and Gunnar Henderson coming up.
Yeah, and they just had DL Hall come up.
Yeah, two, like Henderson and Rodriguez specifically are like two top 10 prospects.
Mm-hmm.
Like with Adley Rutschman developing and already some major league talent.
Adley Rutschman developed.
Like, oh yeah, Adley Rutschman, he's developing into, like, right now he's like a top 5 catcher. He could develop into the best catcher. But yeah, like, that's an attractive place to go.
It looks a lot better than it did this time last year, no doubt. I know that the wall is a thing, but I don't like Correa. It would be very funny seeing him go. Obviously, there's a spot in between, but going from Houston to Baltimore.
Yeah.
Being like, why is his slugging percentage so far down? I don't know. Look at the Crawford boxes. Look at Baltimore.
Exactly. Yeah.
But still,
Uh-huh.
like I think it's a good fit for him. Like he's a guy that can, shoot the gaps. Obviously there's a lot of room out there. There's a lot of real estate out there in that left field, where the ball can land. And of
Yeah.
course, he has the power to clear the wall a decent amount of times throughout the year.
Yeah. Orioles, by the way, I think have 7 more wins than they did last year.
Yeah.
And I think this time last year we were talking about the potential of the Orioles breaking the losing streak record. Because there was an episode.
Yeah, they did
of
win
ours-
they lost like 17 in a row or something crazy like that, right?
Yeah, and here we are talking about them as playoff team.
Heck yeah.
Love it. I think that man, like with the Yankees playing like they have, I think that Manager of the Year award's probably going to Brandon Hyde.
It has to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe honestly, they could
unanimous.
lose out, and you could still probably make the case that it's Brandon Hyde.
True.
Yeah, if they finish 500, whether they make the playoffs or not, just call it off. It's Brandon Hyde's to lose. Yeah, that's a no doubter for sure.
Yeah. Somehow this related to the Tigers. I don't know. They're bad.
Because we were talking about Jeff Lunau, and then I got into Carlos Correa.
Yep.
Anyway, hypothetically, I think it'd be really sick if they hired Jeff Lunau.
Yeah.
That's how much I don't care about this Astros thing anymore.
Yeah, I hope they don't give up on AJ Hinch too. I think they should give him another year with a new GM, making moves and some new additions.
I agree.
Before giving him the X. So yeah. All right. What's our next? What do we got? What are we talking about next?
Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams game.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. The sequel's never better than the original. I think that's the general takeaway. There were some cool moments. I think the coolest thing that they did in general was having Ken Griffey Jr. and Sr. come out of the corn to play catch. That was definitely a very moving moment. I'm glad that it wasn't like a replica of what they did last year. There was a tribute to Ray Liotta, of course, who has since passed away in the last year. Because I remember we were having the conversation last year when like Kevin Costner walked out from the corn and there was that whole thing. Because we were wondering what they were going to do next year, and we agreed that they couldn't just do the same thing, and they delivered on that, no doubt.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I didn't do my homework. I didn't watch.
That's
didn't watch it.
understandable.
Didn't
That's
watch any of it.
understandable.
It was funny to see them like in the past few weeks promote it like on Fox, where it's like live all the excitement of the Field of Dreams game like last year. It's like, oh yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's definitely it's two playoff caliber teams.
Yeah, 2 just home run machines.
The only good thing about the teams that were picked was just Joey Votto.
Yeah,
like he did a mic'd up interview and he was fantastic. He talked about like what playing at the Field of Dreams meant to him, because like I'm pretty sure his father had passed away or something like that. Which is, that's a very cool thing. It's a very powerful thing for him to do. But a 4-2 game with no home runs hit is extremely underwhelming.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what else they expected with Cubs Reds, because the thing is, like, I understand choosing teams based on geographic location, but you have a stadium that sits like 8,000 people. Like, I don't think you're gonna have problem filling the stands if it's like Giants Dodgers or something like that.
Yeah, or just get 2 teams that like happen to be on road trips in the Midwest area, and have them meet up for 2 games. Why not? Like say the Dodgers and Padres both happen to be, they happen to have played like the Brewers and Cubs in the same week. Have them meet up for a series in
I do
Iowa.
feel like to stick with the Field of Dreams theme, we are obligated to have 2 teams that played in the dead ball era, so the Padres probably wouldn't be a good choice. But Giants Dodgers, why not?
Yeah, I forgot that element.
Yeah.
But yeah, it I wasn't gonna be too excited about it. The bravado is always cool. And the moments within that are always cool, but like, I mean, the Field of Dreams game last year could not have gone better.
No, it was like MLB gave themselves no shot of topping it this year, and they definitely did not help their case by putting on Cubs Reds.
Yeah.
Which I understand that when they scheduled it, the Cubs and Reds were both much better teams. You know, it was before the Cubs sold off everything at the deadline. It was when the Reds were still a threat in the National League wild card race. You know, in the moment, it looked like it would be a better game, and it just happened to not be. Both teams went through fire sales afterwards. You know, one being at the trade deadline last year, one being in the winter. But yeah, it was tough for sure.
Right. Yeah, I think they did schedule after last year's trade deadline, but it would have been funny if it was before. It was like, oh, you know,
I mean, they probably
Anthony
had
Ri-
it. They probably had it set beforehand.
It's like, oh, we could have Rizzo, Bryant, Castillo,
Yeah,
we could have Jesse Winker, Nick
Eugenio
Castellanos.
Suarez.
Yeah, we could have all of them.
Oops.
Oops.
Yeah, we got Christopher Morel, who's a solid rookie. I'll give it to him, but
Yeah.
I mean, given what we could have had, it's not as great.
Right.
They were probably so happy when Seiya Suzuki signed with the Cubs. They were like, "Thank God we got something."
All right. So,
by the way, what did you think of the? I don't know if you saw this, but the hologram of Harry Carey singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game."
I did. It was a thing where I saw it on Twitter and I didn't click on it, so I saw the visual, but not I didn't hear it.
It felt very weird.
Yeah.
Like, I think you could have just like, I appreciate the sentiment of putting Harry Carey out there because, like, if you've been to Chicago, you understand the impact that he has on that city, and it's something that really could only be understood basically by people from that area or that have been to that area. Harry Carey's the GOAT. That dude was a legend in Chicago. But couldn't you just use like a regular video of him saying "Take Me Out to the Ball Game"? Like, he did it thousands of times.
Yeah. Well, yeah, true. And also, like, yeah. Also,
because the hologram just looks so weird.
It does, but I think also the thing of like people are gonna talk about it. I mean, you know,
like I'm
people are
very
gonna talk
pro.
about this.
I'm very pro having Harry Carey out there in some form. The hologram was just a weird move.
Yeah, and I don't think it would have been a huge crime not to have Harry Carey there because Harry Carey's very like he is specific to the Cubs and you know, but he's more specific to Wrigley Field.
That's true.
You know, Field of Dream, like I think you can't really equate the two, but you know, it also wasn't a crime to have him as a hologram out there. It was a little weird, but
yeah,
you know.
You know, he has like his own chain of restaurants out there.
I believe it.
Yeah, I went to one of them like years ago when I was in Chicago, but yeah, there's like 3 like Harry Carey's restaurants in Chicago.
Nice.
They all have like statues of him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love like funny like restaurant like guys who have restaurants named after them, like El Tiante's Grill or something like that, like Bobby V's. Bobby V's is very funny to go to.
How many Harry Carey restaurants are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 Harry Carey's restaurants in Chicago or just in the area.
Yeah. Maybe I'll try it out. One day I'll go hunt. I'll go try to find and meet Fergie Jenkins, and then along the way I'll go to a Harry Carey restaurant.
Yes.
So yeah, do you want to get into players to highlight?
Let's do it.
All right. So yeah, now for our the most prepared we will be for the episode. It is our players highlights, starting with our Saturday, August 13, 2022 edition of who do you have for us today?
So for my how about that today, I don't even remember what I did. Oh yeah, I'm talking about a guy. I thought about when this guy debuted. I thought about just throwing him on how about that as a joke, just to be like he has a how about that just for his name. But Lars Nootbaar has been actually killing it lately, so I feel like he deserves some respect. Since July 11th, he is slashing 344, 442, 623 for a 1065 OPS and a 191 weighted runs created plus. During this time, he has a line drive rate of 35.2%. That's over a third of his batted balls are line drives. That ranks fifth highest among the 204 hitters with at least 50 batted balls since July 11th. Before the span, he had a ground ball rate of 53.7%, and in the span, it has gone down to just 33.3%. It has gone down over 20% over the last month. He's hitting less ground balls, and he's substituting for them for line drives, whereas for a guy that doesn't have a lot of power, that's just about the perfect thing that you can be doing. On that same list of 204 hitters with at least 50 batted balls since July 11th, his 412 batting average against fastballs ranks 4th, and his 676 slugging ranks 15th. Also, before the span, he had a walk to strikeout ratio of 0.33, and in the span, it has gone up to 1.3. So it's gone up by almost a full walk to strikeout ratio.
Wow.
Yeah, he used to be walking very few and striking out quite a bit. Now he's doing the exact opposite. That's fifth out of the 172 qualifiers. He also has a 190 weighted runs created plus both on the road and at home during the span, which is very cool. He's just been very consistent wherever he goes. And he's helped the Cardinals jump out to a 2-game division lead over the Brewers during this time. So that is Lars Nootbaar.
Lars Nootbaar. Yeah, anytime you're walking less or walking more, striking out less, and hitting 20% less ground balls, gonna translate to success, I would say.
Usually, for sure.
Yeah, Lars Nootbaar having a great run, great month. My how about that? I went reliever diving. I almost want a sound effect where it's like a splash. We're in the reliever tank. We're reliever diving. But I don't know. That would be too much. That might be a little extra. But it's also crossing another team off the list, and it's a hard team to cross it. A hard team to cross off the list because they have so many guys where it's like
I just want to say,
like
I know
it's the Dodgers.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. I was almost gonna do him just to knock a team off the list, but I was like, I don't want to pick a guy just to knock a team off the list, but also this guy is legitimately worthy regardless of what team he's on.
He's very, very worthy. But like with the Dodgers, you can't, we don't have a full list of guys we can't do a how about that on, but we can't do a how about that on Freddie Freeman. We can't do a how about that on Trey Turner. We can't do a how about that on Mookie Betts. Will's like probably even like Will Smith, or
Will Smith if he's like the best hitter in the league, I'd say.
Yeah, Will Smith if he's the best hitter in the league. But like also like Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, even like Craig Kimbrell.
Yeah.
Can't do how about that on any of those guys. So you have to we have to do guys kind of under the radar, not superstars. And this guy's one of them, and he's been having a superstar-like season in general. I'm talking about Evan Phillips, reliever for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Since the start of May, he has a 0.50 ERA and a 2.15 FIP in 36 innings pitched. Since the start of May, out of 170 qualifiers, his ERA ranks first, his FIP ranks 13th, and his F4 ranks 9th. And since the start of May, out of 463 pitchers with 50 plus batted balls against him, his average exit velocity ranks 6th lowest out of those 463. Overall this year, throughout the whole year, out of 337 pitchers with 100 plus batted balls against them, his expected WOBA ranks 4th. Also, his 12.9% pop-up rate this year ranks 13th out of 337. He's getting a lot of pop-ups, and pop-ups are pretty much guaranteed outs. Also with Evan Phillips, all 4 of his pitches this year have a slugging and expected slugging against under 300. That's very elite when you have 4 pitches under that mark. He has no weak spots in his arsenal.
I'm just impressed that he has 4 pitches as a reliever.
Yeah, I will say his sinker, he barely uses it, but it's, it has a slugging under 300. The other
Still.
3 pitches, though, even having 3 consistent pitches as a reliever is pretty wild. It's a slider, 4-seamer, and cutter. And his
It's a good
cutter,
repertoire.
yeah, his cutter has a 152 slugging against this year. That is the 3rd lowest slugging against out of 111 pitchers to throw 100 plus cutters this year. Evan Phillips, he's been just flat out. He's been great this year, especially since the start of May. I mean, a 0.5 ERA. He's been unbelievable. Evan Phillips. All right, so now we go from the highs to the lows, where we're talking players and subjects that have been underperforming. For our Saturday, August 13th, 2022 edition of
Slightly Alarming.
Who do you have for us today?
So I'm talking about a guy that I believe was mentioned by both of us as a slightly alarming during the 2020 season, and he's going back on the struggle bus. It's JD Martinez of the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah.
Since July 13th, he is slashing 156, 211, 221 for a 443 OPS and a 16 weighted runs created plus. That weighted runs created plus is the worst among the 171 qualifiers. From April through June of this year, his in-zone swing and miss percentage was hovering 16 to 17%, which is pretty average. But in July, it went up 26%. And in August, it is currently at 35.7%. 35.7% of times he has swung the bat at a ball in the zone he's missed. That is quite awful. Since the start of July, he is the highest in-zone swing and miss percentage among 178 hitters with at least 200 pitches seen in the strike zone. So he just isn't hitting the balls that he should hit more often than anybody else in the league right now. He does have a good hard hit rate during this time, but on balls that are below the hard hit threshold, he's batting 103 with a 138 slugging. And among the 183 hitters with at least 50 batted balls over this span, that average of 103 ranks 8th worst, and the slugging percentage ranks 13th worst. The Red Sox were asking for a top 5 organizational prospect in trade talks for JD Martinez, and it's very clear why he's still on the Red Sox given that price and his recent performance and the fact that he's in his upper 30s and a pending free agent.
Yeah, JD Martinez.
Slightly alarming.
Yeah, I mean he was doing extremely well in like the May-June time frame. His overall OPS was in the upper 900s, but he was having some good BABIP luck. Now it's reversed, and now that it's balanced out. And I think his wins above replacement is like under 1.
It's minus 0.8.
Well, but like overall in the season also.
Oh yeah, it's 0.9.
Yeah, it's 0.9 F WAR. I think his B WAR is even less than that. So yeah, not a very valuable commodity. And I mean, I guess the benefit for the Red Sox there is if they want to re-sign him, his price is way down.
And they can give him a qualifying offer this year.
Yeah, true. Very true. And he might be right to accept it, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think they would give him the qualifying offer in that case.
Yeah. So yeah, my slightly alarming. Where's a different pair of socks? He's on the White Sox.
We've done so many White Sox.
Yeah, this has got to be like number 5, number 6. I'm talking about Lance Lynn. We've referenced him a couple times, but it's time to highlight him as a slightly alarming. In 59, so yeah, Lance Lynn, first of all, he started the year with an injury. He came back on June 13th. It was supposed to be a thing where like, oh, Lance Lynn's back, White Sox can ramp things up a little bit, but it's been the opposite. In 59 2/3 innings pitched this year, he has a 5.88 ERA, a 4.63 FIP, and a 4.47 expected ERA, and he also has 2.0 home runs per 9 this year. Since he debuted this year, out of 72 qualifiers, His ERA is second highest, and his FIP is 10th highest, and his home runs per nine is 5th highest out of 72. He also has career highs in the StatCast era in average exit velocity against, hard hit rate against, and barrel rate against. And after never having a barrel rate above 6% since 2015, his barrel rate is 9.8% this year, which explains his crazy home run rate of 2.0 home runs per nine. Also, Lynn's average exit velocity overall in the year is in the 15th percentile. His hard hit rate is in the 14th percentile. Expected slugging is in the 13th percentile, and his barrel rate is in the 15th percentile. And particularly on his sinker, that's where hitters are having the best time. Batters are hitting 417 with a 708 slugging percentage off his sinker. And out of 79 pitchers to throw 150 plus sinkers since Lynn came back, Lynn's average and slugging against on his sinker are third worst. Both of them. So yeah, Lance Lynn, part of the reason, basically, in layman's terms, part of the reason why the White Sox are still not in first place in that very mediocre division. So Lance Lynn.
Slightly alarming.
The Guardians just took first place in the AL Central. They've won 6 in a row. And like, unless they start, making a run, the AL Central almost seems like a bye in the playoffs.
Yeah, dude, it's it's so bad.
I don't want to disrespect the Guardians right now because I do want to talk about them next episode. They're a very, very young team, like a remarkably young team. But man, that division really looks like it'll be a cakewalk for either the Yankees or the Astros.
Yeah.
Or I guess, if the 6th seed beats them.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, what I'm thinking is like, yeah, the wild card as it is right now, number 4 seed is Mariners, number 5 is Toronto, number 6 is Baltimore. Late in the season, if there's a situation where like maybe Baltimore or Tampa Bay or Minnesota is a game behind the 5 seed, and maybe they have the playoff spot in check, they're not going to want to win and face one of the Blue Jays or Mariners. They're going to want to face the Guardians, probably.
I mean, that's how it stands right now. Obviously, things could be different come September, but the Guardians have been winning some games. They just beat the Blue Jays 8-0 last night. They've won 6 in a row. They're now on top of that. I had a stat the other day, age 29 or younger.
What was that? Oh yeah, not over 90%.
93.5%. It was 28, by the way. 93.5% of innings pitched by Guardians pitchers have been 28 or younger, and part of that was because Sandy Leon threw 2 innings because they were getting blown out. Like it probably could be like 94% otherwise.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah, they've had I think 3 pitchers that are over the age of 28 this year. Like Brian Shaw, Anthony Gose, and Sandy Leon. And 2 of those at one point were position players.
Yeah, they just have
or currently are.
They have such a young team, which I mean is good for their future. I mean, I think that's kind of how the Guardians organization has been set up, with how they always trade. They always trade their players at their peak value, except for Jose Ramirez, which is, I mean, the best choice to sign most likely. And
especially if you can get him for like 50% of his value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah. Very very funny how the Guardians roster has worked out. So yeah, now we'll get into somewhat a preview of the weekend ahead. The weekend already started, folks. But we usually don't record on a Saturday, but that's how scheduling worked today. So yeah. Now we'll get into a preview, preview of Saturday and Sunday. The day-by-day matchups will probably be that'll be more fitting to the preview than the series to watch. But I can tell you that the series to watch, we got Blue Jays Guardians. Guardians smacked the crap out of the Blue Jays last night. Jose Barrios continuing to be the most disappointing pitcher of 2022. He
I haven't updated the F4 league yet, but he's definitely going down like 0.3.
Yeah, I mean, thank
Two
God.
walks, a strikeout, 2 homers.
Yeah, for those unaware, we have a league with our friends where you have a team and they accumulate F4, and whoever has the most F4 at the end of the year, you win. And also you can't replace anybody unless they're on the IL. Barrios hasn't had an IL stint this year, so but I have Max Scherzer also, so it's like at least that sort of balanced out. Max Scherzer had a 6 strikeout, 0 walk, 0 home run performance. So, and Edwin Diaz pitched. So yeah, it's sort of balanced out.
All you need to say is Edwin Diaz pitched. You don't even need to say how he did. It's like, yeah, he pitched, so I'm getting points there.
Yeah. I've been very lucky with that, I will say. But yeah, anyway, Blue Jays, Guardians at Rogers Center. Rays Orioles. That's actually very, very, very important because the Rays are out of a playoff spot right now. And the Orioles are in a playoff spot. Rays are half a game out from the Orioles, so that's extremely important. Literally, quite the opposite. I mean, this time last year we were talking about how the Rays were like 14-1 against the Orioles, and now they're fighting for a playoff spot. And then Mets Phillies, 2 of the hottest teams in baseball right now going at it. Phillies won last night, and great pitching matchups to go with that. Cardinals Brewers, top of the NL Central. We got some great series, folks. Got some good series. What do you got? What do you got for the day-by-day matchups?
We got some great matchups tonight on Saturday. Jesus Luzardo will be facing the Braves for the Marlins at Marlins Park. That'll be an exciting one for the Marlins. Their offense needs to pick it up. Ian Anderson will making his return from getting demoted in the second end of the doubleheader today against the Marlins for the Braves. Tristan McKenzie and Mitch White will face each other in Guardians Blue Jays. Fun fact, I almost went to this game, but things didn't get past the group chat phase of a Toronto trip. But anyway, in Orioles Rays, you got DL Hall, who's a number 1 prospect, making his major league debut against Shane McClanahan. That's going to be a really exciting matchup. I don't know if you've noticed this, Chris, or like if you can relate to this, but like, do you ever see a picture of a pitcher or just like any baseball player and you could tell by like the background what stadium it is? Like just the picture of the crowd. Like I do that way more often than I'd like to admit, and it feels like it's kind of sad. Like I can tell you right now, if you look at if you go to the probable pitchers on Savant right now and you look at Kyle Muller, he's absolutely pitching in Cincinnati, no doubt about it. Anyway, you got Yu Darvish going for the Padres against the Nationals. Of course, Juan Soto made his return last night. Same with Josh Bell. Andrew Heaney versus Brad Keller and Dodgers Royals in the all color series. It's the same color scheme on the jerseys. That's fun.
Nice. Wait, what series again?
Dodgers Royals.
Oh yeah.
The all blue and white jerseys. You have Lance McCullers Jr. making his return from the IL against the Athletics in Houston tonight. That's going to be a good one. Lucas Giolito will be facing the Tigers for the White Sox at Guaranteed Rate Field. Marco Gonzalez and Dane Dunning going against each other in Rangers Mariners in Globe Life Field. Frankie Montas making his second start for the Yankees against the Red Sox, and Cutter Crawford, who's been looking good for them as of late. Corbin Burns versus Adam Wainwright. That's an ace-off right there. That's as good as it gets in Brewers Cardinals.
Yeah,
Zach Gallen.
It's an ace-off with very opposite pitching styles.
Yes. Yeah. It's a B-War versus F-War pitcher. Zach Gallen versus Jose Arena in Diamondbacks Rockies, of course. You have Tyler Beatty versus Logan Webb in Pirates Giants in Oracle. Dylan Bundy versus Reed Detmers in Twins, Angels, Dylan Bundy making his return to Angel Stadium. By the way, Reed Detmers, he's looked real good lately. I don't know if you've been checking the stats, but he's been like one of the best pitchers in the league over the last like month or so.
Ooh, interesting.
And matchup of the night, this one's too easy. Comes from Phillies Mets. You could probably already guess. It's Aaron Nola versus Jacob deGrom.
Yeah.
There were a lot of good matchups in Mets versus Phillies this weekend. Obviously, there's that one. Last night was Ranger Suarez versus Max Scherzer, and on Sunday it's going to be Zach Wheeler versus Chris Bassett. Also on Sunday, you're going to have Blake Snell going for the Padres against the Nationals. You're going to have Keegan Thompson going against Justin Dunn in Cubs Reds. Jordan Lyles and Drew Rasmussen facing each other in Orioles Rays. You will have Braxton Garrett going for the Marlins against the Braves. He's had some good run prevention numbers this year. Tyler Anderson versus Brady Singer, a couple of breakout pitchers, will be going against each other in Dodgers Royals. Cole Irvin versus Christian Javier. I believe if both. Did you use Christian Javier as a? How about that, or am I just?
No, but
You
I mean, we talked about him when he combined.
Was a part of the no hitter.
Yeah, he was part of the no hitter, and I think I
Okay.
mentioned like
Gotcha.
he was doing very well at the time.
Yeah. Tyler Alexander versus Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn, like Chris mentioned, just looking to get the momentum back on his side. Aaron Ashby versus Miles Michaelis in Brewers Cardinals. You will have Logan Gilbert versus Martin Perez. Gilbert has been struggling a little bit lately, but he'll look to pick it up in a pitcher-friendly ballpark. You will have Zach Thompson and Alex Wood in Pirates Giants. Chris Archer versus Tucker Davidson in Twins Angels. Jameson Taillon will be facing the Red Sox on Sunday Night Baseball. And matchup of the day, this is another easy one. This comes from Guardians Blue Jays. It's going to be Shane Bieber versus Kevin Gausman.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great one. Great
Yeah,
one.
you have some good, and we'll save Monday for Monday because I can't imagine many teams have announced their starters.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed this one. Yeah, that should do it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. Very exciting one. First of all, yeah, huge thank you to Sarah Langs
Yes.
for her time and insight for Above Replacement Radio. We loved having her on. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to our YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. And subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you want to follow us on social media, follow me on Twitter at Chris_Deonta, and follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be talking all the happenings in Major League Baseball once again. See you then.